Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from, and welcome to Data+Women Germany, where we have another event in our A Day in the Life series today, talking to two data visualization managers. For those of you who haven't been here yet, welcome especially. My name is Heidi Kalbe. I lead Data+Women Germany together with Julia Büchting. She will not be joining us today, but you'll be sure to see her at one of our future events. So what exactly is Data+Women Germany? We are an initiative, part of the global Data+Women initiative, originally founded out of the Tableau community, but we are open to people from all industries, usually the data industry, but of course we welcome new people as well. So we want to offer an opportunity to learn and network all in the area of data analytics, share your knowledge and experiences, and unite people of any gender to promote diversity in the data community. Of course, we are not aimed at just women, and it's because we're all united under one common goal of advancing diversity in the data community. And we, of course, also want to offer a platform to people of all minorities, whether that be gender or age or ethnicity or academical background or anything else you can think of. We want to help you find a secure foothold in the world of data, build your network, and discover opportunities. I think it was Emily Kuhn who said it best a couple of years ago. It's data plus women. It's not data minus men. So everybody's welcome. And what do we have in store for you today? You know that we've started this new series a couple months ago, A Day in the Life of, where we introduce you to different jobs in the data industry, because there are a lot of job titles out there and you may not know what is going on in which position. So we try to interview industry professionals to give us a glimpse into their daily life. I'm very happy to be joined by Tabitha Diaz and Scott Eaton today, two data visualization managers. Welcome, Scott and Tabitha.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, thanks for joining us. Okay, so to start us off, let's say we meet at an event. I have no idea about data at all. How would you express to me in like layperson's terms what you actually do? Scott, do you want to start us off? You're still on mute. It has to
Sorry.
happen once in every
Yep.
session.
Sorry about that. I actually get that question quite a bit. How I would well, normally I would tell everybody I build dashboards, and they get this really weird look in their eye when I say that because they're not familiar with it. So then I kind of dial it back a little bit and basically say I just build visual reports for people to help make better business decisions. Um, I don't try to go into too much detail just because I learned a long time ago if you try to get too technical with non-technical, you lose them after the first like 20 seconds. So that's I try to keep things simple, so that's probably the simplest way I could put it.
That's great. Tabitha, let's assume I am actually someone from the data industry. How would you expand upon the explanation Scott gave us?
Yeah, so normally I start off with, because I am a Tableau and Alteryx consultant, so I normally go in and I'm like, we go into companies to help them make sense of their data. So that can be anywhere from the start of data collection to the end, like the UI and what they're seeing. And then I normally go into a little bit more into the tools. I specialize really in Tableau, love Alteryx, but I've always worked with Tableau, and I always tell people it's a great platform to drag and drop and build visualizations kind of at the drop of a dime. And of course, you can then expand on it further. But normally when I'm just saying what I do, I also just say, the charts you see at the end of the year, maybe at your company, we kind of produce those for people that will actively be engaging with them every day to make business decisions off numbers.
Which is probably great now that all those Spotify yearly reviews are coming
I
in, right?
love seeing that. It's so fun. It's my favorite time of year. That and
I know.
Duolingo. Duolingo's great.
Absolutely. Okay, Scott, now that we have like the high level overview of what you do, can you give us a glimpse into like what does a typical day look like for you?
Um, I'll kind of talk about this in two parts because my trajectory has kind of shifted over the last year. For a good majority of my career, excuse me, I was very hands-on and in the weeds to where um, I was involved in quite a few projects to where I would go out and meet with the stakeholders, get requirements. Once I get those, either create a wireframe myself or figure out how to design on top of a wireframe they gave me. Then just based on those, go out, build the dashboards, everything from building the workflows. We're also heavily into Alteryx here at Chase as well. So I would use Alteryx to build the workflows, the data pipelines, because having the data modeled correctly is key to get your dashboard to fit on top of it. So I'd go through, do that first. Then I'd start working on the initial design of the dashboard. Then there'd be some go back and forth because you think you've got the data set that as you're building the dashboard, some things just sometimes a lot don't fall into place right away. So there's a lot of back and forth with that. Then going through various iterations, meeting with the stakeholders, taking an iterative approach, getting feedback and revising as you go along. Then going through testing, and then at the end, producing, pushing the dashboard into a production environment for them to look at. So that's been the majority of my career. Now, here over the last year or so, I've switched to be less tactical and more strategic, just because that's the career path I wanted to take, to where based on my expertise now, I want to help drive strategy around dashboard builds and things, to where in my current team, one major project we're getting ready to kick off is a entire uplift of our dashboard environment, which is over 60 dashboards and 700 plus users across those. So I've been tasked to create strategy around how to uplift each dashboard from a UI standpoint and also from a data latency standpoint. So that's a huge undertaking, and really for me, I think fits in my wheelhouse of is as the next natural progression of where I want to go in my career.
Yeah, amazing. And to anyone attending, if you have any questions to Scott or Tabitha, please feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll throw them in as we go. So today we have the luxury of having someone with like an in-house perspective, and Tabitha, you're kind of taking the consultant perspective, something we've touched on in previous sessions of this series. So Tabitha, how would you say does your daily work differ as a consultant from what Scott just described from an in-house point of view?
Yeah, so I think the first part that Scott said is very typical, I think, across any kind of data analytics professional, anyone dealing with data, you're kind of working with each of those steps to some extent. But I will say as a consultant, it is a little different. My day-to-day could be very different. My month-to-month could be very different. It's really, I need to have a lot of flexibility for what I am doing, because a lot of the times coming in, sometimes they're like, yeah, we just want someone to help build reports and just get things out. We have a deadline, we need this, and we need extra hands. But sometimes it is more kind of conversational, where it's thinking of the entire process, figuring out data structure needs, how to create a data model, what are best ways to visualize. I will also say as a consultant, sometimes you are kind of a step like away from your end user. So there's normally someone already, maybe a project manager or someone else on the team that is providing those needs, which I will always say is probably one of the hardest parts of being a consultant, but not having kind of that direct communication with your stakeholders at the end of the day. But yes, completely what Scott does, but also the ability to take on random tasks that, because they're like, oh, Tableau and Alteryx consultant. That is just such an umbrella term. So at some companies, I've helped with server to cloud migrations, which is very different from what I'm dealing with now. That's just like, we're new to Tableau. We want to build these reports and we want them quickly. We want to start testing them quickly. Very in the weeds sort of deal with data still being developed, data collection being organized, like working in development environments. So it's really fun. I can say being a consultant is never boring because I never get to do the same thing really ever. Besides, like, I think building dashboards is probably the most consistent thing I do.
I love that. Okay, Scott, you've talked a bit about how your job has changed over like the last 12 months. Can you give us a bit of a longer experience? Like, how did you actually get to where you're at now in your career?
Yeah, it it has been a little bit of a journey, and I didn't even go. I've been in the industry almost 2 decades now, and my degree is not even in this field, which I've seen a lot. I originally went to school. My degree is in computer information systems, so I went to school for coding. And the first year out of college, that's what I did. I did a lot of web application development, working at the OSU Wexner Medical Center. Then my boss at the time, and I believe this was, and I'm going to date myself here, this was like 2005, 2006. My boss at the time said, "Hey, there's this new thing out there. Executives are wanting to see these things called dashboards. Do you want to take a stab at it?" I was still new, fresh out of college in that learning mindset. And I'm like, sure, let's give it a shot. It's a new skill I can learn, new skill I can kind of market myself down the road. So let's give it a shot. So I did it. I took the ball and ran with it. And as I say, I found my niche and I've been doing it ever since. And then as I've progressed through my career, when I first started, I was just front end development, and because we were using a different tool at the time, we were using Oracle's tool, OBIEE. And so I was doing front end development. We had somebody that did the back end data modeling. And so that from that point is where I started learning my foundational skills. There were some great books that got recommended to me that I started reading by Stephen Few, that kind of helped set my foundation at the time. And then as I've progressed through my career, I evolved from just data visualization designer to learning data engineering skills as well. So learning how to model the data, build it yourself, or at worst case, if you're not able to build it yourself, knowing those skills so you can guide the data engineers on how to build the model for you as you're building the dashboards. So to me, that was the next natural progression in my career at that time. So being able to do that, then I was able to do what I talked about earlier and manage what I call the full development life cycle of a dashboard project. And those skills, I think, are in demand a little bit today as well. Just from and I tell this a lot to a lot of people in the DataFam Career Pathmakers user group when we do the job transition meetings that we have every couple weeks, that I think there's just a huge need from companies today to want people that can do both, just from a cost savings perspective. So just having that skill set was key for me at that time. And then now, as I talked about earlier, I've transitioned to now that I have those skills, being able to use those on a strategic front to be able to help guide the next generation of developers to kind of learn those skills as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Tabitha, what did your career path look like?
So it's not as, I don't really come from a technical background. So the long, short version of all of this, I actually used to be a talent agent for a while. So I used to represent actors across like theater, TV, and commercials. And it was super fun. But the pandemic hit and there was just this shift from union work to non-union work, which as a talent agent is a really hard place to be. And unfortunately, my company was making layoffs and I was one of the people that was laid off. So about 2 years ago, I was like, what can I do that's both kind of artistic but technical, and also allows me to talk to people a lot. And being a data analyst kind of had all of those like check boxes marked off. So it just kind of made sense to make that transition. And thankfully in New York City at the time, there was a free program, a boot camp that it was full time. You got paid to go and learn data analytics. And so that was like SQL, Python, and of course Tableau. And yeah, kind of the rest is history. I joined the Information Lab almost a year and a half ago, and that has been great. But I always tell people, especially I talk to a lot of people making kind of that transition from another field to data analytics, and I always tell them to kind of highlight the crossover between both, because I think a lot of times people think like, oh, you're a data analyst, you could just be like completely in your little silo and not talk to anyone or not do these things. But it is kind of a very social field, probably more than I initially realized when I did start. So yeah, I always remind people that like there's so many skills that cross over, even if you didn't come from a coding background or a maths background or something of that sort. There is still ways to kind of enter into this field, which is really nice. And data analysts are kind of the best. Like, so yeah, everyone's made it.
I absolutely 100% agree. And I'm sorry that you were forced to switch career, but I'm glad that the data industry is richer for having you in it. So
yeah, I love it. I always tell them, it's like, that's the best thing anyone's ever done to me. You fired me. Thank you.
So looking at, so it's always super interesting to me when people have such a diverse career path, completely switched fields. So what would you say are some of the most important, let's say, non-technical skills that you're bringing to the job, or maybe like character traits that you find valuable in your work today?
So I think the ability to communicate, I think, is always highlighted. So we do work with very technical concepts. So making that just approachable to people that have no idea what you are talking about is super important. I always highlight that being a great listener is essential. I think a lot of times people go into meetings and just completely blank, and you're just kind of assuming what you have to do. So having the ability to just actually listen and process in real time, ask great questions, clarify from what you're hearing. And then I think just the ability to work well with others, like Scott's saying, like sometimes you're working with data engineers and you need something very specific. How do you talk to that person? What relationship do you have is so essential to this job. And like also, I will also say creativity. Like business dashboards can be so boring, and I think there's such a skill to make them something that people actively want to use. And I think kind of having that iterative process helps people feel like they're a part of building that vision. So yeah, those are a few things.
Yeah. Scott, you mentioned that you are also training other employees at your company to kind of take over work from you. What are some of the skills, either technical or non-technical, that you are most trying to cultivate in your colleagues?
I think for me, one, to kind of echo what Tabitha said, communication for one. Excuse me. Specifically in my role, I have a lot of visibility to senior leadership. So you need to be able to communicate effectively in non-technical terms your findings. If there's issues with a dashboard that they've raised, being able to communicate the fix in layman terms. Because like I mentioned before, you start getting too technical, you lose them, and you'll lose the whole message behind what you're trying to get across. So communication is one. Another one for me is just fostering a love of doing what we do. And I can give this specific example of the last team I was on. I was brought in because there was nothing that was automated from a Tableau perspective, from an Alteryx perspective. And one of the the people that I was managing at the time, she was a very good data analyst to where go get the data, look at it, analyze it, and report the findings on it. And she did not see the importance of where data visualization came into play with that. So through conversations we had, through some mentoring that I gave her throughout the process, it started fostering her love of Tableau and data visualization to where it's probably one of the best compliments I ever got. She actually mentioned it to my boss that my teaching and mentoring of her in that showed her the importance of it to where it started that fostering process with her to where to this day I still mentor her about once a month, and seeing her grow in her skills to where she was to where she is now is just validation for me around the teaching aspect of what I do, because I I live to pay it forward, because when I first started, it was very early on in the data visualization field, so there was not a lot of mentors out there at that time, and specific for me, nobody I could reach out to. So a lot of these hurdles I had to face on my own and overcome them myself. So if I can take my learnings and impart that to them and help them get to a point in their career faster than it took me, then that's the professional legacy I want to leave behind.
Yeah, I love that. Scott, you just mentioned learnings, and you also told us that you have a couple decades already in this industry. What are maybe some of the biggest lessons that you took away from your career so
Well,
far?
there's two really big ones that I impart to everybody I talk with. Number one, and sadly, to put some context for both of these, I didn't learn them till halfway through my career, and I wish I would have learned them sooner. So, first one is don't be a yes man. Um, as you're learning things, you want to say you want to impress, you want to kind of build your reputation and your brand, and you want to give everybody the world. Um, but if you say yes to everything and then come back and tell them that it just can't be done, that does sadly have a negative impact on trusting you, on trusting your team, and on trust in your organization. So don't be afraid to say no. But if you do have to say no, provide a reason why. So say no, and here's the technical reason why it can't be done, or no, but give your stakeholders an alternative to kind of meet them halfway. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two for me is take pride in what you do, but do not get too emotionally attached to what you do. And I can share that with an example that I had. Um, I had worked on creating a dashboard. I spent about, let's say, about a couple months working on it. And I knew at the time it was going to be a stopgap measure until a new application was in place 6 months down the road. So spent all this time and effort putting the dashboard together, put it into production, and was monitoring it just to see how things were going. And I noticed there wasn't any usage going on the dashboard. So I had reached out to my contact at the time, and I'd say, hey, what's going on? We put this dashboard out there. It's been out there for a week or two. Nobody's getting any use out of it. And he had said, oh, by the way, well, we made the decision not to use the dashboard. We're just going to wait for the application to come in place. When I heard that, I just had a whole wave of emotion running through me. It put me in a state of shock to where it really affected the rest of my workday, because I got that news pretty early in the morning, and it just threw my whole day off. So I had went home that day, as I normally do with my wife, and I'm talking about my day. And she actually gave me the best piece of advice I've ever gotten in my professional career. And I can sum it up into one phrase: choose how you feel. She said, at the end of the day, you were still paid to do the work. And if they decided not to use it, that's money that they wasted, that they could have put towards something else. And that was just profound for me. And to where now to this day, that's a model I live by. So again, just to reiterate, definitely be proud in what you do, because we're all creative people. We like to do things that help educate people and make their lives easier. But at the end, but it's just the nature of our work that some things we create will either get used very minimally or get not used at all. So you just got to be able to know where that line is to kind of keep an even keel with things.
I love that. And the audience is very empathetic. Someone just said she's mad about that, and it's not even her project. So I think anyone who's done a big project just to go to waste has felt that way. Again, for any attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Tabitha, how about you? What learnings have you taken away since you entered the data industry, or also before that you could bring to the data industry?
Yeah, I have to first, for Scott's and the project, I felt so seen there because that actually happened to me recently. And in the moment, I was like, that's my baby. You just killed it. Like, what is going on? But yeah, so you kind of just have to move on and just acknowledge what it is. Like, it's their choice not to use it. You did the best you could. That's what matters. You showed up for yourself, and that's important. But I will say the biggest lesson I learned, and I think this might be more at a like consultant level as well, is the ability to say, I don't know. I think there's a lot of discomfort with being able to just acknowledge that you might not know how to do something or might not know what people are asking you to do. And it is okay to just say, listen, I don't know if that is possible, but I'm more than happy to go back, research, maybe talk to other people, ask for some help, and then get back to you with an appropriate response. I think it goes back to Scott's things like, don't be a yes person, because sometimes you could just say yes, 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 and promise the world, and it might not be possible. Like, there have been so many times where someone has said something, and in my head, my immediate reaction has been, yes, I can completely do that. That's possible. But then I was like, okay, rein it back in. You don't know 100% for sure that is a thing that is possible. So just get comfortable with acknowledging, I don't know. We all don't know everything. It's very normal, but also provide a solution to that. I don't know. Just, I think there's a different way of like, I don't know, and next, or like, I don't know, and that's the end of the conversation. You never want to be that person.
Yeah, I've also found that an honest let me find out is better than just assuming anything and then it turning out non-existent. And also to what Scott said, like, don't be a yes person. Even if it is possible, saying yes, but it's going to have the following impact, and do you really want that, can help you cover your back, right?
Yeah, I've kind of found it to live by the model, under promise and over deliver is kind of a good model to go with.
Absolutely. Okay. So if we have audience members who say, data viz manager, that sounds amazing. That's now my dream job. So we're nearing the end of the year. What are some steps they can take this year to move further towards that kind of position?
I would say for me, it's just getting grounded in the fundamentals. Having that good foundation. Like I had mentioned some books by Stephen Few, and for those interested in what those books are, you can please hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to kind of give you the names of those books. So that's what it was for me a lot, was just getting grounded in the fundamentals, both at a high level view, and then once you think you've got that down, kind of getting more in tuned on a more kind of granular level. Like I said, for the books I mentioned earlier, one of his books was okay. It was all over the place, but it was good. So there were chapter on, okay, here's the questions you should ask. Chapter on, okay, what's the characteristics of a good dashboard? What's the common mistakes people make? What's the science behind data visualization? So to me, getting that good foundation helped, and getting that understanding when I read his next book, which is more in line of, okay, here's how you format tables for readability and usability, here's how you format bar charts, line charts, things like that. Having that base understanding helped me really dive in and understand the reasonings behind the things he said for the specific chart types and things like that. So I think for me that's key, is just getting that foundation will help set you on that path.
Yeah, absolutely. Tabitha, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so jumping off what Scott has already stated, I think finding your niche, like finding something you specialize in, if that's a tool or a way of working, and really just honing into that skill. I think when you kind of go into data visualization, it is such a large kind of industry. There are so many different tools. So find the tool that works best for you. You can learn about other ones, kind of have them in the background. It's always good to like know the differences between tools, but I think having the ability to just focus on one, figure out everything in that tool and make that your specialty is super, super important and beneficial. And yeah, going along with what Scott said, I think just don't stop learning. I think data visualization, there's so many different fields you can pull from. So I've like been getting really into just design books, because there's just so much you can learn from that perspective, and like storytelling as design, like how actual designers already use like storytelling in design, and like products and story structures is really fun, and I think adds like a different perspective to data visualization as a whole.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much. These were all the questions I had. If nobody from the chat has any questions, Scott, do you have any last words of wisdom that you want to offer on your position of database manager?
Yeah, I would say for me personally, I've gotten to the point now where I feel I'm in my dream job, and it's taken me almost 2 decades to get there. Not to say that anything I've done before I've not liked, but it is fulfilling. It has been fulfilling for me, and especially since things for me have picked up probably over the course of the last year, to where I've started getting more involved in the external community. It's just been fulfilling, and being able to kind of teach what you know, I think it is key. And just I I don't ask for gratitude from anybody, but just teaching it and then seeing how the people I teach are progressing. It just that's what keeps me coming back and puts a smile on my face.
Absolutely agree. So we actually did get a question from the chat. Tabitha, maybe you can take that one. So the question is, keeping in mind how many AI tools we have now, everybody talking about AI coming into the database world as well. How secure do you think is the job as a data visualization manager?
Okay, I have a lot of feelings on this. I'll make it quick. I think it's still in a position where you do need data analysts, with AI tools, the ability to communicate with people. I think people also don't acknowledge that AI, you have to know how to speak to it, like what prompts you're giving it. And a lot of people are terrible prompt builders. So I think it's a while before like data visualization as like a career is like directly impacted in that way. Also, just a lot of companies are wanting to integrate AI. I think it's like that one new thing. It's shiny and new, and everyone wants to do it. But most companies, their data is not in the structure to actively use AI. And I think that's something that is a long process to kind of get companies up and running to where their data is even in a structure to make sense in AI. So I think right now it's still a pretty secure thing. I think you're always going to need data visualization specialists. But yeah, that's kind of where I am. I think it's still secure. I think there are ways that you can integrate it in your everyday workflow to just make menial task a little easier, or like, oh man, I have this question and I always look this up, like type it in. But I don't think companies are really at the point that it's going to be beneficial or actually have direct impact on data visualization specialists.
Yeah. Scott, you mentioned that data visualization manager is your absolute dream job. Do you think AI is going to elevate or threaten your position there?
I think it'll elevate it. I don't see it threatening it because AI is good at providing commentary on the data that you feed it, but it's not going to build the dashboard for you, at least not yet that I've seen. So you still need to have the people who are skilled in the fundamentals that can throw their creativity in, because AI is only as good as how you build the logic and the algorithms in the back end. So I really think it's here to enhance what I do. And I'm even looking into some uses of that through like Tableau Pulse and some of the other things on how we can supplement the dashboards we create to provide those more granular insights to help make better decisions. But I don't, at least for the foreseeable future, I don't see it being as a where my job is in any danger in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I think it's especially true what Tabitha said about people being bad at prompts. I think
Yes.
anyone who's ever talked to a stakeholder about how would you want your data to look like knows that people are not ready for AI tools to take visualization.
Yeah, and I don't think I would want to use ChatGPT or AI to create a presentation for me to show to executives. Unless it's maybe more internally grown, like we have here at Chase. We have our own version of it that may help a little bit, but there's still going to need to be some amount of human intervention to personalize things, and I don't think AI is anywhere close to that yet.
Yeah. Asking from a different perspective, Tabitha, you're comparatively new to the industry. If you had to start like your career path again today, do you think that AI would support you and bring you faster to the point where you're at now? And are there maybe things you could recommend for people who are new to the world of data?
Yeah, I think it would have helped. I think when I first started, I just felt so lost because there's just so much material. Like, I love this community, but we produce a lot of content. So like, I think it would be helpful just to like have AI like as an assistant kind of comb through all of that. Like, I know things would still be missing, and maybe there's points where I would just have to double check and be like, is that right? And that might take a second, but it would be nice to have like a tool just kind of like take everything and be like, these are the main points of this article, or like, this is how you can do things. That would have been super, super helpful. And what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, that was mostly it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott, do you see yourself using or recommending AI tools more and more when teaching your colleagues?
I see myself potentially doing it. I see where it does help in ways, and I can use some examples from here at work. We have our own, kind of like I mentioned earlier, version of ChatGPT called LLM Suite. I used it to help write my self-evaluation for end of the year performance review. I've used it to kind of help craft emails that I'm sending out to stakeholders just to make sure things are worded properly, because I'm by no means a wordsmith. So I need help in some of those areas. And even being in the field as long as I have, for me, there's still always something to learn. And I'm always trying to improve on communication, for one. So I do see where it has its purpose, and it can help in those ways. And it has for me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Tabitha, any last words you want to add to your view of the data visualization manager world?
I think just kind of have fun with it. Like, I think data is just a really fun, like, data visualization is a really fun career path. And I think there's so much potential in like how can I visualize this thing? This company's been visualizing something the same way for like the last 30 years. How can we provide a new perspective or add additional clarity? So kind of not losing that aspect of fun. I think sometimes people are like, oh man, I'm building dashboards and this is like the 800th bar I'm building. But how can you make that fun? Like, can I put indicators in this one? I don't know. So there's just, I think just don't lose the fun and joy and kind of playfulness of data visualization. And if in your actual job you don't get to have that much flexibility, do it elsewhere. Like I still do Tableau outside of work, contributing to Tableau Public and doing community projects, because it's just what you can do with data is really impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback off of that too, I definitely agree with the sentiment of having fun with it. I've been doing this a while, and I still have fun to this day, even with the switch I've made. But yeah, still have fun in amongst the fact that there are a lot of times our job is tedious. Especially if to Tabitha's point, you're creating the same charts all the time. I can tell you, for me, 85 to 90% of the dashboards I've created over my entire career have nothing but bar charts and line charts in them, because that's the best way to visualize the data. So it's having fun with it to where you can find the ways to kind of, yeah, if it's still bar charts, but snazz them up a little bit, or just different variations of those chart types. That's where the creativity comes in, and that's where the fun comes in, and makes the job seem not as tedious, because there will be days you're like, I can't believe I'm doing the same thing. But it does get a payoff at the end when you produce something that everybody likes, and you're seeing it drive some really impactful business decisions.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right. Well, fantastic last words. Thank you so much. This was an amazing session. I think many people learned a lot. You absolutely spoke from my heart. So agree with everything you said. To anyone who's been a fan of the series, we absolutely will be continuing next year. I don't have any specific speakers or dates for you yet, but it will probably be Thursdays again. So stay tuned. You are on the email list, so you will absolutely be notified once I publish any new events. But this was the last event for 2024, and I'm so glad I had you two here with me today, Tabitha and Scott. Thank you so much for your insights into the data visualization manager role, and I wish you a happy Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.